Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So today is going to be part 3 working on that Stihl MS 291. First video we totally tore it down. Second video we put new seals on and I walked you through on how to replace the bearings if you needed to do that. We had split the top from the lower, put everything in a whole new case, as the last case was just totally fried. The previous owner left the chain brake on, and I want to say on high idle, and basically destroyed this along with many other parts. So figured we'd shoot a video just, you know, pretty much fixing it back up and seeing how it runs. Now, some of these things, you know, like this saw is something I haven't done a whole lot of, but it's always fun to shoot a video and hopefully help the next guy out. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, hit that bell, hit all, and let's start assembling. If you've already got her apart, I didn't fully take this whole guy down because we didn't need to. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to grab this clamp. I know I'm not getting all technical parts and yada, 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 because you know what? Most guys doing this aren't looking for that. Just looking for that step-by-step instruction. So I'm going to put this hose clamp deal on here. Okay, so that's where it goes. Looking at the back of the motor where your carburetor and your spark plug all go. Now you can take a little bit of white lithium grease if you want. Put just a smidge up and around. Just a little. It'll help get that rubber piece on. Not much though. Only if you do it, it's just a little bit of it. So the issue here is you don't have a lot of room, right? You don't want to punch a hole in anything. You don't want things like that to happen. So it is good to get yourself an old screwdriver where you can round over your edges, and you're going to use that to help push things in place. Now, in trying to put this on, it's going to be easier to get the lower section on. So I'm going to actually just kind of apply pressure down on the lower side here. Attempt to get this guy in place. Make sure that boot's on all the way. Make sure that little hose clamp is on all the way. Just got to look, make sure everything's pushed back as far as it'll go. It's going to be tough for you guys to see here on camera, but on this side there's a little lip on the boot and a little lip on the motor. They kind of go underneath the motor over top, the rubber piece underneath here. All right, and then look and just make sure everything is pushed all the way back, seated on, so it all looks good. I'm going to tighten that clamp back down. I had put screws back in. I'm going to remove these. Now, if your screws won't go right in, you're going to have to kind of force them down and twist nice and slow. So some of these you got to create threads. They don't come threaded, but you can do it all by hand with the T-wrench. You can use a drill or something if you want, you know, to put them in place, but I'd rather just do it by hand. Take this piece with the yellow, green, black wire. All right, it's got to go on like this, but we're going to fish these wires through the hole they came out of on the side. This one. There's a rubber grommet on there. Purposefully did not detach all of that, knowing we were going to have to monkey with this. So I want to try to get that rubber grommet back in place without having to disassemble everything. That tends to mean it's more of a pain in the butt. For me, that's all right. If it's not for you, it's all right. Take things apart that much further if you want to. The rubber grommets through with your wires. Our ignition coil, and you'll have two different ends. The black wire seems to go right on the ignition coil. Should be able to see how this is going to mount up. We will need to make some adjustments to the ignition coil once everything else is together. So not worried about like where that's at, you know, at the moment, but All right, so we're gonna put the ignition coil on, have the wires be on the motor side of the wire for the coil. Groove up here, that's actually this wire will pop in. Okay, you put your coil down there. You got to make sure everything is going to line up before you put that wire in place, though, because you're going to have to make an adjustment. But you can take this black wire, pop that on, take this guy, push this in place all the way up through. There's another one here. Push this in place. Now round it over a flathead screwdriver. You don't want to puncture, rip, tear. Just to seat that home. The two screws with washers here, they tend to be the more finer thread of the three we just pulled out. We are going to have to make an ignition coil adjustment later on. Screw that's got to go on the inside, you'll see your yellow wire. It's got an end. Put the end through, and then put that through to screw down the ignition coil on this side. Gonna need the funky black piece, right? This is gonna slip kind of under your wires. Should all fit home. Then you have that third screw you pulled out. This should have the bigger threads. So now we can grab our flywheel and the nut that was for that and see if you can get it on. Now I say it that way because the ignition coil might be in the way and you might need to slide the ignition coil back in order to get this flywheel on. In this case, it's too far forward. So not pulling the screws all the way out, but I need to loosen everything up. Pull that back. Now there is a groove cut in that crankshaft, and there is basically a square pin in here, so just line those up. You got to put this on. Scrunches, one will fit. Usually it's the flathead one will fit the nut for the flywheel. Now we're not going to be able to tighten this all the way down. We are going to try and push back. You're going to have to push this back because it's magnetic, right? Here. Push this back. Put your thick business card in. Let it go. Now you're lining this up to the magnetic spot on the flywheel. It actually says S and N, okay? So that's pulling it in. We have this here as our spacer. Now we're going to tighten down those two screws. Now, Stihl does make an actual aluminum spacer for this. You'd have to order it up through your dealer, or you might be able to find an ignition coil spacer on Amazon. I'll look and see if I can find one on Amazon. If so, guys, I have it linked down below, along with tools and things that I'm using. Parts that we're using to do this repair, though, have been OEM parts through Stihl dealer. So I mentioned all part numbers and references in the last video. We'll see. Hopefully it's not too tight. Hopefully nothing grabs. I'm going to spin this by hand right now. Actually, a piece of the card stuck. There we go. Just spinning this by hand, making sure nothing's grabby. Okay, so let's run down part numbers for this video and the rest of this build. Gasket, part number 11231490500. That's the exhaust gasket. Needle cage 95129332260. Oil pump 11416403203. O-ring 1122649500. Worm gear 1133640710. Brake band. I did end up ordering a new one. I thought I didn't, but I did. That one was pretty overheated. You could tell it had bluing and it's a mess. But anyway, brake band 1141-160-5400. Supports for the clutch 1127-162-3000. Make sure you get 3 of those. Clutch springs, make sure you get 3 of these. 0000-997-5600. And the clutch shoes, you'll need 3 of these. 1121-162-0802. So these are all the part numbers we're going to be putting on here, all right, guys? I know I should have started the video with this, but it is what it is, and this is where we're at. So let's get back to this now. Let me see here. So now we got to get into the oil pump. Well, we got to put on the oil pump, I guess I should say. Just this guy is going to go in here like so, right? That's how it's got to sit. Now, you get ready to do this, you're also going to need that O-ring I mentioned. It's not an O-ring you're thinking of normally. It's this kind of a plastic, hard rubber plastic piece. Your O-ring up here, there's a little hole that's going to sit up in there. Then you're going to put this back on. Push that in place. You're going to have to actually push it into the O-ring. Right now we're in place here. The only thing is I just messed up because we got to hook our oil line up. Good thing is the O-ring is already on now. Okay, so you could just do that. Take your oil line, put that on while you're here. Now the oil line came with the housing. If for any reason you need an oil line, I ordered one because I didn't realize it came with the new housing, but the hose for the oil line is part number 1141-647-9401. All right, so I got an extra one, no big deal. Smaller thread compared to some of the other assembly screws. See how thick this thread is? This is a finer, tighter thread. You're gonna need 2 of these. They're about, what, close to 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch long, just in case all your parts are twisted up together, mixed in.
You're going to screw down into 2 metal pieces. Chances are they're not going to already have threads, so you're going to have to put a little bit of pressure on them. Get them going.
Worm gear just pops right in like that. Okay, good to go. We are going to need that great big washer that's covered in plastic. So we need to clean this thing up though. Get all that plastic junk and grime off it if you're going to reuse yours. The supports, the springs, and the clutch shoes out. If you're not sure about what way they go, grab your other clutch if it's all together and just take a look. Now the one thing we will be reusing out of the old clutch, we got to reuse this centerpiece. All right, didn't order one of these up. For the most part, I was thinking it looked all right. It did get overheated, so we'll roll the dice and see what happens with it. Got to pop these springs off though, so you can pull this thing apart. Alright, so this is what we're reusing out of the clutch. At least I am. You guys can always order a new one. I just don't have a part number for you. So what you can do though is lay out the old one, right, and just kind of see how it's supposed to go. Take your new parts, flip them, spin them so they are the same way as the old one, right? Okay. So we'll put one side in again. good grip. Get started. Pop it in the rest of the way. This piece, spin it down. Just want that all kind of together. We're not tightening anything down at the moment. We're just letting it all rest. Now we've got to look back up here. The little spring that was up there in that assembly fell out on me. We did put this right back on in the first video for the brake, for the chain brake handle and assembly area and all this fun stuff. Now I gotta pull it all apart though and try to get that all back on there. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it all off until we get the handle on. That way I don't have to worry about nothing falling apart. Take this guy. Throttle rod, I should say. Pop that up through the bottom. Twist the whole handle underneath. Gas line up through the hole. Light tug. Don't get it to come undone or anything like that. This piece has to go through that yellow one. Don't forget, there's a black rubber grommet over here. We popped it out, and we probably should have left it out in order to get this thing back together. But I think, actually, what we got to do, pull this guy back out. One last thing we got to struggle with. We're going to push this all over and down, kind of. All right, so that's back in. So when you're here, right, this plastic piece is kind of loose. The handle will come in through here. We're going to take this, pop all that in place. Gas lines under here. Kind of got to look underneath, pull it up through. Okay, and the gas line goes underneath the plastic here. And you'll see what looks like some hooks. You got to be able to seat it in and out of the plastic underneath. So your fuel line goes underneath, comes up, wraps around the whole bottom side, and then you see the hole here where it's sticking out. Okay, the spring comes up above the gas tank, comes through. This is the end. You're gonna line up, you grab one of those smaller screws. It's not like a ton of great camera angles here, but kind of move the saw upside down. And you'll see where things need to like seat in place here. In the handle, black handle, and this is the bottom of the handle that your trigger's in. Sorry guys, it's not very easy to... This yellow one in first. Okay, so that pops in. This has to be compressed, pushed down in. Okay. Before I put my 2 screws in the bottom, carefully flip it over. Line this stuff up here. I'm going to put this screw in, these 2, and then I'm going to do those ones in the front. So you need 5 screws to put that handle back on. 4 of them are about 1.25 inches, 1.5 long, heavy coarse thread. The 5th screw is much shorter. It's still kind of coarse. So here is more of a machine, tighter thread. This one's more coarse. You're gonna need this more coarse one. Okay. That one's gonna go up here in the top, the spring that you see. Your chain catch. So your chain catch will sit here, and you'll take the one screw that's weird looking, right? Doesn't have a flat bottom on it. It's got that, what is it, other head there, but that one goes down, hold your chain catch and that other spring in place. Okay, handles on, all that's together. Working up here. First things first, we gotta put the little spring in. Holds all this stuff together. Little tiny guy. It's got a hook on the end of this piece and a little metal tab that's in here. Now we got to assemble the whole chain brake area. If you still have all these pieces in from the other one, you know, you got your spring in here, you still got that C-clip and everything, and you're right where I'm at. I'm going to take this piece, pop this guy on, take a little black kind of washer spacer they've got. We're going to pop that guy on. We're going to take our handle, and you'll see on this side there's a spot for it to kind of fish over the plastic. On this side, and come over here, get it popped on. Actually, this side might be a little bit easier. Get your handle down here where it belongs, within the right vicinity, if you will. You're going to need to take this guy. There's a slot in the handle here. Should slide through, and you'll see it. Right, but that won't pop in all the way because you got some stuff in the way. But first, let's see where this will line up for your angle. And we're going to move the handle forward a little bit. There's a little bit of space in here, you'll see on yours. And if you move the handle forward, there's a little more space. Now we got to try to pry that down with the spring so this will pop down in place. There's like a lot of moving things going on here all at once, but we'll see how it goes. Pry it here. This piece has to be just in the right spot so everything is lined up at the same time you're prying. Definitely one of those parts that's a little tricky here. So you're trying to get, let's see if I can try to show you guys. You're trying to get this little piece seated into the black plastic. So it takes some patience and some finagling around, but then the problem is if it doesn't seat in perfectly here, you kind of got to pop the whole thing up just enough to get this other piece over that tab, because these got to go together. So this is kind of a pain right in the butt. I'm going to try to slide it up some without totally disassembling the work I just did, which gives you just enough room. Hold that, push it all back on. All right. Woo. Got a little C-clip to go and hold all this together. So that's all on. You need to tighten everything down though and lock it in. So we're gonna bust out that rope with the knots. Just twist the flywheel backwards toward us until the piston comes all the way up to the top. And when it starts to go back down, stop, twist it back the other way, and then stop a little bit. So at this point, we'll feed our rope in. Once your rope's in, turn your flywheel back toward you till you feel it get tight. Grab your scrunch. Grab your flat-headed scrunch, is usually the one that fits. Get that on the nut for the flywheel. Tighten that guy down. Once the flywheel side is tight, come on over to the side where your sprocket normally is. Now you want to go counterclockwise. So you want to be, if your saw's like this, you want to be pulling toward you to tighten this up. Put the flywheel forward just a little bit and pull your rope out. Everything's tight here, so now we can move on to the brake band. I got the slot cut up in the end. Fish that up in here. Push your brake band in. Easiest way to attach the spring is to have like a hooked pick or something like this with this shape, okay? Stihl makes a tool for it, but when you're here in your garage, you don't really have that. Hook it at the top. The spring is here. You got to come all the way back to this little knob. I'm going to go through the first little loop in the spring and attempt to stretch it back that way. Certain models, some different techniques work a little bit better than others. Alright, so that guy's in. Okay, grab your needle cage bearing, put that on. Line your sprocket up. Now if you had a bunch of plastic on this guy, make sure you clean it up. Sometimes there's a bunch of plastic in here from the old needle gauge bearing, you know, from everything melting down. So you'll have to clean that out if you're reusing it. Slip this over, line up that oil pump piece as well for that groove. Pop that guy on. Grab that weird small looking washer. That guy on. Grab your C-clip. Hopefully it's still good and didn't get damaged. Here's a part you guys can replace. I didn't bother. Part number 11410211101. Then it says B. This cover is going to sit on here to help keep dust out of everything when you're running your unit. Put the lower half in first. Kind of work it in place here. The dog's back on. See, they got a different shape, right? Top to bottom. I'm going to go on like this. You should be able to read where it says Stihl. Should face the sprocket side. Carburetor. This is your gas line. Remember your fuel line's down here. Fuel line neck. Basically should be able to tell what way it's going to go, but you also need to make sure this throttle linkage is in the plastic piece on the side here. Take your carb, put your fuel line neck down, should be facing down. Slip it on. When you put that in, make sure that neck goes into the fuel line, which should be held in place. Well, that's working as it should for now. Actually, I don't want to put this plastic piece on. I always forget about this before putting the spark plug in. This piece, all right, and it is going to sit this way. Take this piece. Basically, you got to monkey around with it here. You got to get it in. Move your carb a touch. Take spark plug wire, fish that over the carb. Fish this piece in behind all the plastic and everything that's there. It's good to have these things clean because you're monkeying around where you can get into the motor and have stuff get debris, and you don't want to do that. So this is kind of tough to walk you guys through. You got to just be able to put eyes on it. Pop that piece down. Back in. Try to fish this black piece on in front of the carburetor. There's not a ton of room here, so you got to push the carb back all the way. Kind of finagle it on there without ripping your wires off. Again, make sure all this stuff is clean. Once that's on, you're going to need your choke linkage. This can be a little tricky sometimes to get this piece back in where it goes. So you're going to put that choke lever on. You should be able to hook it in here. Give it a twist, it's in. Come down on this black piece, there's a little groove. Pop this up however you have to. And pop it in place. Now this is a little difficult because I already missed a step. So I might not be able to. Let's see here. Nope, it went. Now the thing I missed was the rubber pieces here that everything's got to kind of seat in. So you got to fart around with these a little bit. We'll break out the screwdriver with our rounded edges. Got one on this side. Next, gonna need this next piece here for over the carb. It looks like it's got 3 holes, right? These are for the nuts. That top hole goes up. So when you put this on, it's gonna seem like weird, but that's the way it is. Now you may have difficulties, I say it now when we're done with the job, right? With those 8mm sockets getting in there. I know I got one I kind of ground down. Sometimes the other ones don't fit well. Like that one doesn't fit. Where's my 8mm for this? Got a long 8mm socket, but this is a Craftsman 8mm socket. It's a little bit more slender compared to like this other cheap one I've got, like a Walmart one. The Walmart one won't fit in here to tighten these down, where the Craftsman one gives you just enough space. So you may have to grind down the edges of your 8mm to get in here and do these things, right? Now what's nice is these nuts are a flange nut, so they pop right in. tighten them down. Now I am going to have probably a T-handle set tag down below. Again, you may have to modify the girth in order to get it to fit in here. So my air filter on, hard, that goes on, and then your muffler, and then this thing is pretty much done. When you're trying to put the muffler on, you put that muffler kind of like spacer on, it sticks on the motor. Take your bolts, I just pop them right in there. It's going to be that T27 to put these guys in place. Tough to show on camera here, but hopefully you know how to put your muffler on. Pop that place back on top of your recoil. Now all the screw holes here, there's no threads in them, right? Factory brand new case, so they're plastic. You're gonna have to, you know, push the screw in through those. So it's pretty self-explanatory, guys, right? Side cover, bar, chain, top cover, you're done. I gotta let this thing sit. My sealant I just did in the last video, which was only a couple hours ago. It says let it sit for 24 hours. So I'm actually going to do a fourth video where we fire this thing up for the first time. See what we get out of it, and if we need to hook it up to the computer for any fine tuning. So hopefully this has helped you guys out, you know, breaking down your 291 and putting it back together. Again, if you guys want to see how this one's going to run, keep an eye out for part 4. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, hit that bell, hit all, and I appreciate you guys watching.